Hello, everybody. Big nerd time. I don't know if I'm sounding okay, but here we go. I also, for those watching archived, I don't know how long this live stream is going to actually last, because believe it or not, I would rather be reading the Silmarillion than live streaming, but I also have almost no one to talk to, and texting gets exhausting. So I'd rather just talk about some of the things I read and discuss it on a on a live stream, so I could talk about it, move on, and then read the next 9 chapters in the Silmarillion, which is God tier writing. Tolkien is the GOAT. It's fantastic. I'll wait a couple minutes. Nobody shows up, then I'm just gonna talk about it. I also watched episode 3 of House of the Dragon. It's pretty good. So that is something. Also drinking coffee. How do I sound? Do I sound okay? That is something. Also drinking coffee. How do I sound? But yep. Silmarillion, guys. I should say that this is not for everyone. I actually I think it is. I think there's just a stumbling block there might be for some people, more especially people more my age. Because it's not written how you normally expect, or not how you would normally expect, but it's not written modern. It's it's very like King James Bible, um, and it's more like a history book or a Bible than it is natural. I don't know, natural's the right word, but it's not like a normal narrative structure that you think of when you think of a story. You know, in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, you follow Bilbo, you follow Frodo and the other characters, and they go on an epic adventure, you know, beginning, middle, end. This you have a creation story of all these names, all these characters, all these subdivisions of races, and all this stuff matters, and all this stuff enhances stuff down the line. But it can be a little hard to follow. As this is my first time, I'm not going to lie and say I really caught everything because I did it. But if you allow yourself to get invested in it, it is one of the most immersive and well thought out things I've ever experienced in my life. Like, the only thing that I think has more depth in it is the Bible itself. And that's the inspired word of God. Sorry to those who are triggered by that statement. But, this is fiction, of course, but it's really good. I have a few notes. By a few, I mean a bit. And I just want to kind of discuss it because I need to get it off my chest. If no one sees this, it's fine. And then I'm just going to kind of move on and continue reading. So, yeah. I also finished Jedi Prince. This was funny. But first chapter is basically creation. We have a Iluvatar, who we can basically think of as God, as like God in the ultimate sense. Like, when I talk about God, I'm thinking about the God, the Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end, Yahweh, that God. But then we have the Valar, who are they're the children of Iluvatar, but in a sense, they aren't angels. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't want to upset Tolkien fans, but they seem to be minor gods in that they hold some of the power that Iluvatar has, but Iluvatar is far beyond all of them. There's a lot of names for these gods too, or these minor gods, I should say, because there's the Maiar, which are more like angels, I think. So it's kind of hard to kind of place where that's all at. But we have Nemo, who's the master of spirits, keeper of the house of the dead. Vari, I apologize if I ruin these names for you. The Weaver, um, Urmo, Lorien, Master of Visions and Dreams, Olmo, King of the Sea. All I really know about Niena, when it says something about her, is that she mourns. I don't know how relevant that is to anything, but she mourns, I guess. Mandwe is a name you hear pretty often, so that one I circled, as that one seems to be a bit more important, as he's kind of seems to be the leader of the rest of the Valar, or like I said, they're not exactly angels, because we have angels technically. They're like the Maiar, so I guess they're more like, minor gods, I guess. But he's Lord of the Breath of Arda. At least that's how it's described. Ale, another great one. Master Smith, he'll be the one that creates the dwarves, so he's a very important dude. Tolkar, he's fun. He's just a really buff and strong dude. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, but very loyal, very strong. Esti, probably butchering these names. The gentle healer of hurts and weariness. Varda, Lady of the Stars. Yavanna is another name that's very important. We hear a lot. She is the queen of the earth, giver of fruit. Like all of nature and stuff. She's kind of the one that's in charge of all of that. Though we also have Arom, who's Lord of the Forest. And then we have Satan, though not exactly, again, because in biblical mythology, if you want to call it that, I call it history. But Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call him, is an angel that went dark. But it's very clear that he is more than that this guy, Melkor / Morgoth, as he would later be named, is another one of these minor gods, and he is the most powerful out of all the Valar, which is interesting. And the whole this is all I'm just naming stuff off that I wrote down, because I figured all this stuff is very important, because all this is all kind of set up, and it's hard to get into this story, but all of this is very important for stuff that's going to go on moving forward. Because if they just start talking about the Valar around chapter 7, you'd be really confused as what all that's going on. So all this is just good world building and setup for the universe that Tolkien's made. But Iluvatar wants the Valar, to play a great cosmic music. It's really interesting that the creation story in this world is through music. He basically wants all the Valar to play in harmony with him, to do this grand orchestra that breathes life and creation into the world. And if you notice, the music seems to show all stages of the world. You have like the rising stuff with tension, and it shows like kind of the history of what the world will eventually go through. But the issue that arises, or one of the first things we start to see that goes wrong, is that Melkor, basically an allegory for Satan, he doesn't want to be in harmony. And another thing that's, Tolkien's story is definitely more of that classic, fantasy, good versus evil. It's not like Game of Thrones, where you have a lot of nuance there with people who are terrible people, if you just looked at them on paper, but they're a lot more deeper than that. It's pretty black and white in Tolkien's work, and yet there's still nuance here, even with Melkor, because he wants to create things. He wants to be unique and make wonderful things, which is not inherently wrong in of itself. I don't know how well I sound with any of this, because nobody's here, but Melkor wants to create things, which isn't necessarily wrong. The issue is that he doesn't, um he wants to be set apart from the rest of the, Valar, and so when he starts playing his music, it starts going out of harmony with the rest of everyone, and so it starts to, um, disharmonize the music, starts messing up the music that Iluvatar had everyone playing. So Iluvatar has to tell Melkor to stop. He chastises him, and Iluvatar creates a brand new, you know, music for everyone to follow. But again, Melkor wants to go his own way, starts doing his own thing, and gives him another warning, and he does it again. Melkor just he's not a very good listener, not a very good team player. Melkor doesn't like playing by the rules, as we see earlier on in this story. But this is all just very important for the first setup. So this is only within the first like 40 pages, maybe less, of the book because Tolkien is insane, and it's wonderful. I'm just gonna check how I sound before I continue going. Um, but yeah, it's a fun time, I have to say. Uh, but yeah, it's a fun time, I have to say. It seems like it sounds okay, but I don't know. You tell me, guys. How does that sound? Okay. Uh, and so we go through a lot of things in the book that I'm already kind of forgetting because there's so much, and I'm thinking about more of the last couple chapters I read. Um, but all of it's important. But eventually, the world is created. The world of Middle Earth, Arda, um, and all of the Valar start trying to make things. You know, and Morgoth, Melkor, just gets so jealous of the fact that they keep creating these wonderful things, but they're also doing it within Iluvatar's will, right? And so, in Melkor's jealousy and anger, the being who wanted to create mainly just destroys and perverts. It's, as Palpatine said in Episode 3, it's ironic. Manwë, which seems to be the leader of all the Valar, seems to be I don't know what the best way. I guess you'd say like Moses. I don't know what you would say here. He seems Iluvatar at one point seemed to talk to everybody, and now that they're on Middle Earth, it seems that only Manwë seems to have direct access to talking to Iluvatar. At least that's what I gathered. I could be completely wrong. That'd be really funny, wouldn't it? And one of the best parts of these early chapters for me was Eol. I'm probably butchering his name. He tries to make dwarves, but they're empty. They're like shallow husks. Like they're like puppets. They only work. They only breathe. They only do things if Eol is directly controlling them. Therefore, they're not really living beings. And it's very similar to Melkor, because Eol wanted to create life in the same way that his father, Iluvatar, created life, right? But Melkor's motivation was to do it bigger, to do it better than Iluvatar. He wanted to prove himself superior. Eol just wanted to be like his dad. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Growing up, if you have your family, I'm sorry if you don't. I'm sorry if you didn't grow up with a dad or a mom or anything. But for those who did, or scratch specifically having to be a birth father or mother. Just take any figure in your life that you look up to, as you're growing up? You want to emulate that person, right? You want to be like that person to make them proud. When Ael tries to make the dwarves, it wasn't out of this arrogance to be better than his father. He simply wanted to create like his father did. Um, and so Iluvatar comes down and he's like, "What are you doing? I did not grant you this gift. You cannot do these things. Only I can." And Ael's like, I didn't mean, to like, I know I'm paraphrasing. I didn't mean to tread on you. I didn't mean to go against you. I wanted to be like you and wanted to do something wonderful like that. And, because Ael, unlike Malcor, was humble, Iluvatar allowed the dwarves to be created, which I just thought was really cool because it also gave a very Abraham and Isaac sort of vibe from the Old Testament, where um, Ael was going to bring the hammer down on the dwarves that he had just made, but Iluvatar said, "You don't have to. Like, it's fine because you showed humility." I just love that because it's a very similar, and I'm kind of reharping, but it's a very similar motivation to Melkor. The whole thing at the beginning. It's just that he he was humble about it, and again, it reads so well. Like this story, there are parts, um, and this is going to depend on the person. Some people really love genealogies and maps and all that. I'm for one, every time I read the Bible, I believe it's the word of God. I believe it's true. Uh, but there are chapters of the Bible where it's literally just like a genealogy of people, of a lineage, right? Going down, because the whole point is just trying to get you to the Jewish people leading up to Jesus Christ, right? It's showing the lineage through time and space to get to the most important figure in history. And so Tolkien also does that with a lot of names, a lot of places and stuff. A lot of that stuff, unless I see the name several times, like if I see the name several times in the story, then I'm gonna, remember it. But otherwise, I kind of gloss over that stuff. But when it really grabs you, it really grabs you. So like that section with Yule, I don't know how to freaking say the names, man. It's hard. Aul, that part really stood out to me. Hello, Jason. Serena Silmarillion, barely remember anything of how dense it is, so a reread is in order. So that's the thing. That's the wonderful thing about the Silmarillion. I can read this in like the next 5 years, and I'm still gonna have um, an amazing experience with it because I'm probably gonna pick up on things each time that I missed the last time. So I only read the first 9 chapters because there's so much to talk about. I thought I had enough to just discuss here. And basically, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm debating whether or not I'm going to just quickly read the Jedi Knight novellas of Wakao Katarn and then go back to the Silmarillion, or if I'm just going to skip Star Wars today and just keep reading the Silmarillion. I'm kind of leaning on the latter, but I also want to read the novellas by William C. Ditz, so we'll see. No other author can make counting names. It's interesting. It's still hard for me, but I get that. This kind of stuff about descendants is also present in older works like Odyssey. Yeah, it's a thing in older things, where a lot of characters are the sons and daughters of X, and yeah, a lot of that. But yeah, that whole section with the dwarves being created was one of my absolute favorite parts of these early chapters. Because I love the parallel to Melkor that it brought forth, and the difference between humility and arrogance. Tolkien's words are always beautiful to say. Yeah, that is so true. But the dwarves, I have a lot of notes. The dwarves would awake. Hold on, the elves would awake. Oh, so the dwarves were put away underground for a bit, I guess, if I'm understanding correctly. and they won't be awakened till men are awakened, is what I think I'm getting from that. Um, the elves come first, though. In fact, we still haven't seen the first 9 chapters, unless I missed it, but I'm fairly certain I didn't. That there are still no men. It's just the elves at this point. Well, not at this point, but at the point that I'm done reading, which is the first 9 chapters. The elves are awake. And what's interesting too is it says that their fate would be known, like to the Valar and to Iluvatar. Their fates are. Well, I mean, Iluvatar knows everything, but the Valar, they pretty much know what's up with the elves. With most of them, they know their fates. But with men, when they would come into existence, that to the Valar, their fates would be unknown. And that's one of the reasons why Melkor fears their coming and fears them in general, and why he tries to corrupt them the most out of all the races, because he has no idea what's up with them, because no one except Iluvatar knows what's up with them. So I think that's pretty cool. I think so. I had Fenyor burned. I forget all the names, but Fenyor, I'm already probably butchering that name, but he burned the ships of the what the fudge. There's so many names, man. It's hard. Of the Neldor, I think. They're the shipbuilders or whatever. And he burns those ships, which they're all like buddies, they're friends. And he's like, I give you all this crap, and you're not gonna give me your ships? And well, I mean that's down the line, but that's where I last left off. What else is next? Right, when the elves did eventually come, Melkor grabbed some of the elves and corrupted them, which created the orcs. Now, after those initial orcs, I know the creation of orcs is different, though. How they're. I'm just a casual Lord of the Rings kid. I'm just getting into this deeper world, Mr. Star Wars nerd. I say Mr. because you're the main one of the channel. Though if it's your wife, if it's Mrs. Nerd, hello. But I'm pretty sure it's Mr. I'm still getting over COVID, so I apologize if I cough and choke. But yeah, it's interesting. Because I mean, I remember the movies. I'll say more than Lord of the Rings book and the Hobbit book, because I think I've read those once, and I've watched the movies several more times. But I know that how orcs are created after this initial instance is different. But I also hope, I have no way to verify this, but I would hope that these original elves that were just kind of kidnapped and corrupted still get to go to whatever is considered heaven in this universe, because that was not something they wanted. Always, Mister. Okay. Oh, what the frick? If you're in the zone with Tolkien, you should definitely keep reading Silmarillion. I do want to. I just also want to keep my Star Wars reviews going. But I also decided I didn't want to get burnout with Star Wars. And since I'm pretty much hitting an era that I'm fairly familiar with, I'm only missing a couple things within it. I think I'm going to start switching back and forth. One, because my channel got more subs off of Star Wars, so I don't want to just burn through all the content and then have no more Star Wars. I also don't want to get burned out from it, so I'd rather have a bunch of other things to discuss back and forth between the stuff I already know as I re-review stuff like the X-Wing books or the Thrawn trilogy and all that. So, like, I think before I start the X-Wing books, I'm going to finish off the Butlerian Jihad trilogy of the Doom prequels. Then I'll read the X-Wing books by Stackpole. Maybe some Halo books before I start the Ray Squadron ones. And then I'll read all the way up to the Thrawn trilogy, take another break, do Dark Empire and stuff. And, just kind of keep switching back and forth between a couple different things just to keep the variety of life going, because I've pretty much gone through all the stuff that I didn't know in Star Wars before. So, but back to the topic at hand. The elves have a bajillion different names too, by the way. So they're all the elves were called Quendi, okay? But then you got several different subdivisions of that. There's the Venyar, Noldor. Okay, I was correct on that. Um, Teleri. And the Teleri have subdivisions of Sindar, Nandor, uh, Laquendi, and Veminar, and then there's the Avari and the Merquendi. And you probably already are like, what the fudge did I just say? I know, there's so freaking much. But that's just within the first couple chapters of this damn book. Look, man, I could talk about it in text form, but it's too much. I needed to I needed to just leach it out of my mouth so I could have it said and done, and then I could go back to reading either Star Wars or more Silmarillion, which is what I was like, I'm not going to do a live stream, but then I'm like, I have so much to talk about, and if I just keep reading them, I'm going to have more to talk about, and my mind's going to be killing me because I won't have talked about it with anyone. I just decided to talk about the first 9 chapters since there's so much in there already. Then I'll leave you guys, go read more, probably do another live stream, talk about the next 9 chapters. Dark Empire is pretty good. I have to say, I never hated it. I dig the art. I dig the colors too. I know they're a little weird for some people, but I like how stylized it is. I mean, I wouldn't mind a different colorization just to see how that would look, but I really enjoy Dark Empire. I do put it above the Thrawn trilogy, but I'm not Blue Pig. Blue Pig's stupidest aspect, and Thrawn trilogy is still good. Not the best thing ever, but it's good. Noah should read the Silmarillion. His brain leak? It would, bro. There's so much. There's so much going on in this book. Quenya? Well, let's see. There's freaking a million names, dude. You got, hold on. You got the freaking Morquendi, Mori, Quendi, which was their original name. Nandar, Laquendi, Lai, Quendi. Yeah, there's so much. Yeah, I hear that book is really good too. I really loved the original Dune book. And I gotta be honest, I only read it because one, I heard that George Lucas got a whole lot of inspiration from it, which once you read Dune, it's very clear. Tatooine is it's Dune. Then all in frick, I'm becoming a brain leaker. But Dune Messiah, I look forward to reading. All I know is that it's shorter because you don't have to do as much world building because it's already been established. And that the whole theme of Dune mainly is that your heroes will become the villain, much like The Dark Knight says, which isn't necessarily something I prefer. I'm definitely more of the classical way that Tolkien does stuff where there's true good and evil. I mean, I also like more nuance, like in Game of Thrones and stuff, where you can have a terrible person on paper, but also be sympathetic toward them when you actually read about them. So I like nuance and stuff, but sometimes it's just good to have a story where you have true good and true bad. I read it once, I think, in like middle school, maybe. I've watched the movies many times. I actually held off on Lord of the Rings entirely because I thought it would be boring. But I finally read it. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. But then I had no interest in the movie, and my dad was like, watch it. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. I think The Hobbit is much more simpler than Lord of the Rings to get into. So, I mean, and I know a lot of people hate on the movie. I gotta be honest, I barely remember the Hobbit book, but there's so much heart in the Hobbit movies. I'm sure it's flawed. Just like I still think it's better, and this may upset people. I think it's better than the Star Wars prequels. And I like the Star Wars prequels a lot. So, but there's a lot of flaws in them. I feel like there's less flaws in the Hobbit movies, other than the CGI can be pretty bad. And the third movie didn't need to exist. It's basically just one big action scene, which I dislike Fate of the Jedi Apocalypse for also being a big action scene. And that's basically what the last Hobbit movie is. But the first two, I think, are pretty solid. If they could have just crammed that fight scene or whatever, until the just make the second movie be like 3 hours. It would have been fine, but they tried to stretch it out into 3 movies, and it wasn't needed. Sorry, I'm skipping a lot of comments. I didn't mean to. I'll start reading Fellowship after I read The Stand. Good idea. I think I'm going to read The Hobbit as soon as I finish Silmarillion, not going to lie. This is one of the few series where I'm a purist. I don't want to read anything Lord of the Rings, not written by Tolkien. I'm willing to give Chris's work a try because he's the right name. Um, as far as I understand, I don't think Chris has actually written anything original. I know there's 2 books of particular stories that are already in the Silmarillion, and they just have extra notes by Chris, talking more in depth about what was going on through his father's mind at the time and whatnot. Noah should read the Kevin J. Anderson. He's gonna read them because Chainsaw Productions Jeremy wants to read those with Noah, but they're gonna do that after they get through the Frank Herbert books. So I just, me, I read in chronological order. I have to, which is why I started with the Silmarillion instead of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. Yeah. I think about a couple scenes in particular too with the Hobbit movie. There's a scene near the end. Well, there's multiple scenes. I love the whole song that they have. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates in the which I think is from the book in the movie. I love the sense of adventure too in both Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Though The Hobbit's more lighthearted for obvious reasons. I love the guy playing Bilbo Baggins. He does a phenomenal job. I love the entirety of the whole section of Gollum. Masterpiece. That I could have gone for 5 hours of riddles with Gollum. Let's go. That was wonderful. And then there's a scene near the end where what's his name? Frick. No, what the fudge? So the main dwarf of the Hobbit movie. And asks Bilbo why he came back. And that whole scene was just really heartfelt and really sweet. And then, of course, you have Benedict Cumberbatch's Smog, which was in the second movie, which was a whole lot of fun. And there's still a lot of scenes between that dwarf and Bilbo that just make it worth it. There's also romance in it, and people complained that it was unnecessary. And it probably was. That being said, it wasn't offensively bad or anything. It just kind of like added time, which wasn't necessary. But at the same time, I didn't mind the relationship, so I didn't really care. No, sorry. Oh my goodness. Did I say sequels? I meant the wait, no. I said the Hobbit movies. Didn't I? I tried watching the Fellowship movie once, gave up because I found it boring. That's fair. I felt that way when I was in middle school. Or like 6th grade, and then I tried it again in like 8th grade. It's like, oh, it's actually pretty good. I don't know. I enjoy the Lord of the Rings films. Each time I watch them, I enjoy them more. But especially for Gollum. My precious, you don't have any friends. Nobody like you. Oh, that's not a good idea for my throat. That was really a bad idea. But it's okay. It was fun. Tolkien himself disagrees with me, but that's why he's the master and why I'm just a fanboy. Christopher is very protective of his father's work. If only he could have stopped the Amazon show. Yeah, I hear some weird things about the Amazon show, like the way they got a hold of it was a bit weird, but they can only do the second age because of certain reasons. So I don't know. I hear it looks stunning, but stunning can't get you enough. Or it's not enough, I should say. I think The Hobbit has the same problems like The Walking Dead. They're both too stretched out and didn't need to be as long as they were. I mean, I mostly think the biggest issue comes from the third film. I think the first 2 films are pretty solid. I mainly only have an issue with the third one, as it's just a big action scene. for 2 hours. And if you watch the extended edition, it's this 3 hours of an action scene. So, um, that's my biggest complaint with the Hobbit um, trilogy. Uh, but I love all the actors. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of dwarves. Not all of them get enough screen time, but I don't think all of them did in the book either. So that's fine. I like the first Hobbit movie because it adds pathos to Lord of the Rings movies, especially with Gollum. Yes. That's what makes a prequel good. I don't mind the other two, but they don't do anything for me. I mean, what I love is that I've seen some pictures of fan art, or I don't know if it's official or fan art for the Silmarillion. And then you go back and watch the Hobbit movies, and you're like, oh, Smog, a big bad dragon, right? Oh, well, he's a little tiny boy in comparison to the dragons that existed in the past. Um, I actually have seen the first two Hobbit films. Forced to watch the second one in cinema. Was okay. I really like the first one. I like how much heart is in it. I like that the Fellowship novel starts slow from the start. Snow might find it even more boring. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think the movies do. They portray that pretty accurately. You know, you start out in the Hobbit, but that's the whole point, right? You start out in the Shire. Everything's nice. All the hobbits are smoking weed, eating food, having a good time, not in a care in the world for the bigger things going on around them. They're just living their best life in the Shire. You know, just these little dudes. And then they have to go on this crazy life endangering adventure, you know. And then you read the Silmarillion and you're like, they're dealing with forces, like, to them, like, yeah, all the things they're saying are scary, but they had no idea how bad of a situation they were actually in. Yeah. Throat cancer. Amazon only has the rights to the appendices, which is barely even any content. So to make up a lot of stuff. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I really like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He came around. Remember this, Noah. I would, but I've only seen a couple of them, and I'm just talking about the chapters of Silmarillion, so I can actually just regurgitate things that I wrote down, so that I can go back to reading more of the Silmarillion. I can see that. There's ups and downs to all it. Just like the Silmarillion, there are parts where I don't really care because it's a whole lot of names or descriptions of the forest or the trees, da da da. And I'll pick up on some things like the true trees that light up in the sky, you know, that illuminate the world. Like, okay, that's important. But then there's other parts I skim over. So, you know, it just depends on your preferences. But I do think when Tolkien hits hard, he hits hard. As there's some things I haven't even discussed yet. I have some different fan pictures for that I can't wait to get to, just to talk about it. Tom Bombadil, the character that does not show up in the movies because would be unnecessary. The book is better when nothing actually happens. After reading some of the Silmarillion, I luckily had a much easier time reading Fire and Blood, less dense. Oh, by the way, I did watch episode 3 of House of Dragon. Really enjoyed it. I've not enjoyed the Game of Thrones universe so much since season 4 of the show, at least in terms of live action stuff. So I put it on bar with that. I think the acting's really good. The last episode showed some great scenes between King Viserys and Rhaenyra. And I was like, can I get another 15 scenes of people talking, please? Daemon fighting was awesome, but I could just do with 15 more scenes of talking, please. It's glorious. Please give me more. The only thing that's a little bit jarring is the time jumps in that show, because first episode, then second episode is like, oh, and it's very on the nose too, or it's like very deliberate, the dialogue, which I don't really like, because it's really only for you, more than for the characters. Like, oh, it's been 6 months since da da da, and you're like, well, why wouldn't you already know that? You're saying that for us, not because you don't know that. And then the next episode goes, oh, it's been 3 years. My son is 2 years old. Again, you're only doing that for us, not because the characters don't know that. But I get it. Need to, get across somehow that time has passed. But that's probably my biggest complaint with the show so far. Is just that very clumsy writing there. I feel with getting across time. I feel like they could do like a montage or something else to do a better job of explaining the time jump. But instead, they just blatantly tell you every time how much time has passed, and I've just noticed that. But other than that, episode 3 is pretty good. Um, See ya. Enjoy, Noah. I think so. I'm not sure. I think because I think I remember seeing that name several times. Um, um, Iowand of the lesser Enua of Arda, which are kind of like angels. I just wrote down the names of these. I found these on the Encyclopedia of Arda, just because I figured they'd be important. Um, Maius of Yavanna's people, later known as Radagast the Brown. He's Iowendi. Olatar or Aluatar is the Maiar of Orome. I can't even pronounce this one. Koriomo. I don't know how to freaking say this. But this Maya belonged to the people of Eul, and would be known as Saruman. Very important. Saruman the White, later down the line. Orlorin belonged to the people of Mandwe and Varda, and would be known in the future as Gandalf. Sauron is also in this category of the Maiar, though corrupted. So it's weird. You have Iluvatar as the god that I would think of when I think of God, and then the Valar are kind of like minor gods, I guess, in a sense, small aspects of Iluvatar's whole. And then you have the Maiar, which are more like angels. So I guess even though Melkor is very clearly a Satan allegory, Sauron would more fit that description since he's an angel. But also Balrogs, that we, the big demon things we see in the movies, or in the movie Fellowship, also goes under the category of like these angel beings, though as far as I understand it, they started off bad because they were created by Melkor, I think. I could be wrong. Yes, basically. Yeah. I kind of just skim ahead when all that stuff's going on. Two cosmic lights were made, which Melkor eventually destroyed, which caused calamity and led to the Earth as it was being ruined and basically reformed. Think like Pangea in the real world. It's going to happen twice. There's going to be another epic thing that happens that makes the Earth get messed up. But this is the first time, which kind of affects your whole dating of the map. Because even if you started to have an understanding of where things were kind of in this book, well, get the frick out of here, because now the world's been kind of messed up. So now the way things are is different now. So now you got to re-understand everything about how the map works. So don't even bother trying. The only time I'm going to bother trying with the map is when we get to the actual age that I know of, which is the third age. But yeah. Christopher Nelson on my stream. I'm honored. 2P's older fans are going to include Thrawn in the next season. I always see Iluvatar as God and the Valar as Greek gods. Yeah, I can see that. Tolkien did a lot of his Christian influences are very clearly on the sleeve, but there's also very clearly some Norse stuff and Greek stuff going on there, which I noticed. The dwarves being very clearly very Norse. What else do we got here? So there is an epic war between the Valar and Melkor, because basically there's a whole section where Melkor, he kept messing with it. He messed with the, sorry, there's a whole lot of things I forgot to mention. So there's these trees in the background, right? They were, the light of stuff. And also there was these like 2 cosmic lamps or something at one time. And Melkor just went out of his way to just destroy everything. He kept just ruining everything that the Valar would create, which again is so ironic because the being who wanted to create things the most, and yet all he does with all of his free time is destroy, pervert, and ruin everything he touches and doesn't actually create anything. It's, again, I said this in the beginning when no one was here, as Palpatine would say in episode 3, ironic. Yes, yeah, exactly, Sivert. But yeah, so there's so much, guys. But yeah, he keeps messing with people. He starts whispering into the minds of the elves. I don't know if this is later on or not. Everything's kind of jumbled. But he starts whispering like, "Hey, Fëanor, this and that." Although what I love about Fëanor, and he's like, he tells the most powerful Valar to piss off because his pride's that great, which is a detriment to him, but also is also pretty epic that he basically tells Satan to go F himself, which I think is just funny. But eventually Melkor pisses off the Valar enough that they're like, no, we're going to stop you. Oh, sorry. No, I went out of order. I'm sorry. Melkor keeps destroying everything, pissing off the Valar. So they, at this point also, Sauron's been corrupted. He's joined Melkor. He's like Melkor's top lieutenant. Anyway, so they're gathering an army. The Valar go to fight against Melkor, and there's an epic battle that ensues. We don't really get much depth into it. We're just told it's epic. And it shakes the earth, and all the elves are in fear and stuff. And this is the second time that the earth gets messed up. So again, any map you might have started to be getting, block out. Doesn't matter because the earth's been changed again. But anyway, so Melkor goes into prison for a really long time. Yeah, basically. That's how petty he is. Because he could spend the time actually making something, but then he'd have to be humbled and be like, oh, do it in Iluvatar's will. But he doesn't want to. He wants to be better than Iluvatar. And so because he's always pissed off at other people for creating good things, he just goes and destroys all their hard work. Yes. Yeah. I'm trying my best. But no, I remember now. So anyway, but years pass, right? And Melkor is, he's basically out on trial. And they're like, are you going to stop? Are you going to be a buddy now? Because we don't want to treat you like crap, but you're treating us like crap for centuries. Can we just be buddies now? Now, paraphrasing, of course. Tolkien says it much more eloquent than me. And he's like, sure, fine, we're good. But he doesn't mean it. Of course he doesn't. He's Melkor. Vindictive little bastard that just has anger in his heart always. And so he's like, yeah, sure, we'll be good. And he spends the next, I don't know how much time passes, not given an exact time frame, but just a long time while the, elves are situated in the land. He just starts whispering to all of them. Just starts, seeding in little seeds of doubt, between each other, between, the different elf factions. And then this is when we get introduced to Fëanor and Fulcrin, and other characters. Lots of names to remember, guys. And so this starts causing division among there, and unrest, which eventually leads to the Valar noticing again. They don't really realize, because they're kind of stupid in this part, that it's not Melkor doing all this, and so they yell at Fëanor for this, and Fëanor gets in their face about it. So there's a whole lot of stuff going on there with that. Um, also, during that battle that I mentioned from way back, Sauron wasn't found in that battle. Melkor was, but not Sauron. So I just thought I'd mention that. Also, Fëanor will be the first to call Melkor Morgoth, which is interesting. But yeah, the biggest thing that Melkor does while seeding all this dissent, all this, bad blood between characters is between Fëanor and his brother, which would become the catalyst for the end of the stuff that I've read, at least. Oh, right. The most fun part. Here, let me show some different things here. I'll stop this real quick, and we'll go. Hold on. I need to get this on here. Where is it? Is it this one? No, it's this one. Okay. Alrighty. Hold on a second here. Oh, there we go. You see that? You see that? You think that the spider Sheila in Lord of the Rings or any of the spiders in The Hobbit, hell, go do a different franchise, Harry Potter. You think those are big? Do you see this lady? This beast of a spider. I would kill myself right there. If I saw that thing, that's it. I'm killing myself. I don't want to be anywhere near that thing. I'd rather die than be anywhere near this spider thing. It's one of the most epic things I've ever seen, read about in a fantasy. I freaking love what's her name? Ungoliant. Love it. Oh, I probably did. There's a whole lot of journeying. There's this whole thing with this ice place. It's very dangerous to people. Most people can't make it through, so there's a longer route you have to go. If you go through the ice thing, you can get to different places quicker, but it's very perilous and no one would probably survive it. And there's a longer route you can go, which is where a lot of elves went. This is where a lot of separation between different elf factions happened. But Melkor, I think, went through the ice place fine because he's Melkor. But yeah, there's a whole lot of things that I'm kind of skipping over because there's a lot to talk about. But I mainly just wanted to talk about stuff that really stood out, and this was one of them because we get the mother of all spiders, Ungoliant, which she was one of the ladies that was corrupted by Melkor. The last thing that happened when I read is that Fëanor went and burned the boats of the Neldor, I think, elven people. Galadriel heard, right, because Galadriel is the only recognizable name that I've had so far. But Galadriel, or I guess and Sauron, but Galadriel wanted, or she heard what Fëanor was saying about leaving the Valar, and being free to rule as they please. And the temptation was there for Galadriel, which lends so much weight later on to Lord of the Rings when Galadriel would be again tempted by the ring and yet resist it. Because that's one of the things about her, is that she does have that temptation within her all the time to be the one in control, to be the one ruling. But that was one of the last things I read. And then the Valar are very pissed off at Fëanor, and they banish him. So that was the last thing I've read. That was the end of chapter 9. But yeah, with the big Ungoliant spider, Melkor asks for her help. And so Melkor and her go to attack. And this is when Ungoliant, she goes and bites the trees that I've been showing for the past 40 minutes, which makes her grow exponentially. And it causes havoc, but they eventually leave. I'm skipping over a bit. And Melkor, I forgot to mention this whole section. There's so much, guys. There's so much. Fëanor creates these things called the Silmarils, and Melkor lusts over them, and he wants them badly. So during this whole scuttle with Melkor and Ungoliant, he he successfully steals the Silmarils, even though they burn him, because like nothing evil is supposed to be able to touch the Silmarils. That's true. That is true. But she's very much a glutton. Like she just has to keep consuming things, kind of like to make a Star Wars parallel, Nihilus from KOTOR 2. But she wants the Silmarils, and Melkor's like, nah, this is what I wanted. Look, I'll give you other things, but you're not having this. And so it causes Ungoliant to attack Melkor, Satan in this setting, basically. And Satan's afraid. Satan's afraid of this thing. I mean, I would be. And it gets to this even more epic part where they're on this mountain, and Melkor's like, oh, I'm fricked. And he gets the frickin' Balrogs to come and help, and the Balrogs fight her off. Ah, it's so cool. All right, I forgot to talk about the things the book is named after. Yeah, that do be me. I'm sorry. My mind has a million things going through it. There's so much that I could discuss, and I did this. I usually prefer doing it. I usually prefer talking about things, whether it be in my reviews or a live stream, like right after I've read it, so everything's fresh in my mind. However, it was already pretty late when I finished reading it, and it's the next day, so some things are not as fresh in my mind because I don't have the best memory, which is one of the detriments of being Alex, but it's okay. Yeah, Silmarils, though, very important things. We got to remember that moving forward. I believe they will continue to be important things because Melkor puts it onto his crown, which hurts him, but he doesn't care because he has them. But Ungoliant does not die. After that encounter with the Balrog, she runs away. She has sex with multiple spiders to create more spider babies of hell, the worst creatures that God ever created. I mean, in real world, spiders suck. I mean, I don't think Iluvatar created them, but still. Especially her. I think she was directly a result of the darkness that was starting to spew throughout the land. Anyway, apparently not even Tolkien knows what happened. I mean, I know Tolkien knows. But as far as Tolkien shows us, there's only speculation. And the speculation we have is that her hunger was so much that Ungoliant eventually consumed herself, which is just crazy. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of the best things I've ever consumed in any medium. It's I don't think I could have appreciated it as much if I was younger, and I think I'll appreciate it more when I'm older. I think it's a book that I can always read every couple of years, and I'll still probably get something out of it. But I'm glad I have not delved into it until now, because I think if I had tried this during high school, I wouldn't have gotten into it. I wasn't as much into reading in high school. I was a big reader for all of elementary school and middle school. I was an early reader. And in middle school, I had no friends. I'm going to be honest here, get a little personal. I had 0 friends in not middle school. Middle school. So what I did primarily for elementary school during lunchtime, kids were playing for library and read books because I didn't want to be around people. So I continued have friends. So not all my time was devoted to reading. I also played video games, which also consumed a lot of my time. Then I got to high school. I kind of fell off of reading for a bit. And then, as I said before, so I used to start as a way to kind of not think about that. And so I got back into reading through Star Wars, which is why probably another reason why I hold the expanded universe so dear. But, that being said, not even the best EU book. I'm talking Stover, I'm talking Lucino. It don't matter. Nobody holds a candle to Tolkien. No one. Tolkien is on a whole other level. Rest assured, Tolkien has made me... I've never been a big fantasy fan. I think I've said that before. Definitely more of a sci-fi guy. But Tolkien's got me into it. And if I can find anybody that's even remotely similar to epicness, or at least a good writer, I'll give it a shot. Like, I hear a lot of good things about Wheel of Time. So I'll probably read Wheel of Time at some point. Anyway, so Ungoliant is gone. And I already mentioned Galadriel's desire for power. I guess I've kind of talked about everything that I wrote down for the first 9 chapters. I've already kind of discussed the the end of the stuff I have read so far, which is there's a whole thing near the end where what are they called? I think it's the Neldor, but I could be wrong. It's Fëanor wants these ships because basically Fëanor wants to leave the Valar because he believes they're oppressive, and he doesn't want to, as the atheists would say today, a sky daddy ruling over them. He wants to be the master of his own life. So he wants to depart from them. He only has a couple options, though. He can take the very, very long journey over there through, I guess, hiking there or walking, going on. I don't know if there's horses at this point, but, just taking a very long trek to get to his desired goal. Or he could take a quick but probably lead to death route, which I mentioned before, which is the icy place, which will most likely lead to a lot of his followers dying. Or he can take these ships, which will get him to the same place he needs to go much quicker, but without the high risk factor that the ice place will get him to. Probably not, because I don't know. I have to go to work to get tested. And assuming I'm negative, I don't think they're going to let me work. But then I'll have to come back home, and my internet's not always the best. So it really depends on multiple factors. But yeah, I hope you have a good one, Sivert. So he goes to I think it's the Neldor, but I could be wrong. Hello, Blue Pig. Probably going to be ending it soon, though. And he asks him, hey, I want to use your ships. I want to go across. And he's like, his buddy's like, no. And he's like, oh, you would dare deny me this after everything I've given you, after everything I've helped you accomplish? And his friend's like, I'm not denying you friendship. I'm still your friend, but it's also the duty of a friend to tell another friend when what they're trying to accomplish is folly. You should stay with the Valar. You should not be trying to leave. Also, we created these ships. In the same way that you value your Silmarils because you created them, we made these ships. We value them highly, and we're not going to share that info with you. It's nothing against you, but it's ours. And so Fëanor comes back and burns all the ships, or burns most of them, and takes the people he deems the most worthy and goes across in the ships to wherever he's going to go. And that's pretty much where it leads off at the end of the chapters that I've read. Blue Pig, as your question, I just discussed this. This is Ungoliant, the mother of all spiders. She has a fascinating story. You can probably just look up a summary online if you don't want to read the book, but she's terrifying and a fun time. But yeah, I'm probably pretty much done now. That's pretty much my summary of the first 9 chapters. Pretty good for an hour and 5 minutes. Could have gone more in depth, but I don't have anybody else on here to talk about it with. You're good. You're good. I'm just saying that I discussed it, but overall, Silmarillion is biblical in proportion, and it's very interesting. And we still haven't even scratched the surface. We still have a lot more material to get through. So I'm probably gonna go get to reading it now. I might stay for a little bit to see if anybody wants to talk about anything else, but otherwise, I got more reading to do, guys. So, but yeah, Silmarillion is something incredible. Tolkien is an incredible writer. Let's see what else do we have here. Just to share some other pictures. We got I got Chrome tab. Got Melkor right here. He's pretty cool. Like that little arch right there. We also got get rid of this one. We got an art of my favorite scene from this book so far, or one of my favorite scenes. The spider's pretty great, but we have the scene where Eol. Can I zoom that in? But yeah, Eol, who's one of the Valar, him trying to create the dwarves, and then Iluvatar as just like a shining light, talking tale, which is pretty great. But yeah, no. There are pigs, but there are no pig characters. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I discussed a lot what I mostly wanted to talk about in my short summary, which does not do it justice, of the first 9 chapters in the Silmarillion, the Bible of the Lord of the Rings. It was epic. But yeah, I think I'm going to end it here because I don't have anything else to say. And there's not enough people here to keep a conversation going. So whether you're here late... yeah, no, I'm sorry. 9 chapters in, there's not a single thing that's been written in canon of Star Wars or Legends that comes close to the writing that is Tolkien's work. Tolkien is on a whole other level when it comes to writing. Tolkien is a goat in every sense of that phrase. So, but yes, there's fun pig characters in Star Wars. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Whether you've been here for a while, kept checking back in, just showed up, appreciate it. This is kind of a spur of the moment thing. I didn't want to do a review because I'm not gonna do that justice. But I didn't want to just talk about the thing because like I had all these things running around in my head, and I wanted to discuss it with somebody. So why not my audience? So, but yeah, now it's just a debate whether or not I'm gonna read the novellas of Star Wars Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, or if I'm just going to head straight to more Silmarillion. But I guess we'll see. Until next time, guys, stay safe. Have a good one. Love you all. Goodbye.